The eye that never sleeps. Chilling doorbell camera encounters. Introduction. The illusion of safety. In the modern era, our homes are supposed to be our fortresses. We invest in high-tech locks, reinforced windows, and sophisticated alarm systems. But perhaps the most revolutionary addition to home security in the last decade has been the smart doorbell. These tiny, unassuming lenses were designed for convenience, to let us know when a package has arrived or to see who is at the door without leaving the couch. However, they have inadvertently become the ultimate silent witnesses to the darkest corners of human behavior. They capture the moments when the veil of suburban peace is torn away, revealing a world of predators, the desperate, and the truly disturbed. When the sun goes down and the streets grow quiet, these eyes that never sleep record things that would otherwise remain hidden in the shadows. Today, we are diving deep into a collection of doorbell camera encounters that range from the bizarre to the life-threatening. These aren't just clips. They are windows into the terrifying reality of what might be lurking on your own front porch. Chapter 1. The Echo of a Friendly Stranger. Imagine it's the middle of the night. You're fast asleep, tucked away in the safety of your bedroom. Outside, the world is silent. Until it isn't. A motion notification pings on your phone, but you're too deep in slumber to hear it. On your porch, a figure emerges from the darkness. He doesn't look like a burglar. He isn't wearing a mask or carrying a crowbar. Instead, he stands there, bathed in the blue glow of your doorbell camera, and he starts to speak. "Hello," he says. His voice is unnervingly friendly, almost cheerful. "Hello, is anyone home?" He begins to bang on the door, not with the frantic energy of someone in trouble, but with a rhythmic, persistent thud. He tries the handle. It's locked. He doesn't stop. He continues to call out, his hellos echoing through the empty street. There is something fundamentally wrong with the tone of his voice. It's the kind of friendliness that sets your internal alarms screaming. It's the sound of a predator trying to sound like a neighbor. This is the reality of the friendly intruder. Many criminals have realized that the best way to get inside a home isn't to break a window, but to be invited in. They use a mask of civility to lower your guard. In this particular case, the intruder eventually gave up and vanished into the night before the police could arrive. When the homeowner checked the footage the next morning, they found a later motion notification. The porch was empty. No one was there. But the memory of that voice, that friendly, haunting hello, would stay with them forever. It serves as a chilling reminder. Just because someone sounds nice doesn't mean they belong on your doorstep at 3 a.m. Not every terrifying encounter is born of malice. Sometimes the horror comes from a mind that has completely lost its grip on reality. At 4:30 a.m., a house in a quiet neighborhood sat empty, its for sale sign the only thing standing guard in the front yard. Suddenly, the camera triggered. A man came sprinting from across the street, his feet slapping against the pavement. He was completely naked. As he reached the porch, he used one hand to desperately cover himself, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. He began to ring the bell and knock with a frantic intensity. For over a minute, he paced the small porch, his eyes darting around as if he were being hunted by something invisible. The fear in his eyes was real. But as the seconds ticked by, that fear shifted into something else. Something the homeowner later described as pure crazy. He cried out for help, a guttural sound of agony, before disappearing back into the darkness. When the police finally caught up with him at 5 a.m., the truth came out. The man was high on crystal meth. In the throes of a violent hallucination, he believed that his clothes were filled with snakes. He had stripped them off in a frenzy and spent the night running through the neighborhood, ringing doorbells and screaming for salvation from a threat that existed only in his mind. While this story ended with an arrest and no physical harm to the homeowners, it highlights a different kind of danger. When someone is in the middle of a drug-induced psychosis, they are unpredictable. They are capable of immense strength and have no concept of boundaries or consequences. A doorbell camera, in this instance, provided the necessary distance between a terrified homeowner and a man who had become a danger to himself and everyone around him. Chapter 3. The Hooded Aggressor. One of the most dangerous mistakes a homeowner can make is opening the door without knowing exactly who is on the other side. We are conditioned to be polite, to answer the door when someone knocks. But in the dead of night, that politeness can be fatal. At 10 p.m., a man in a dark hoodie approached a residence. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight up to the door and immediately tried the handle. Finding it locked, he rang the bell. Inside, the homeowner, described as too trusting, didn't check the camera. They didn't look through the peephole. They simply turned the deadbolt and opened the door. The moment the latch cleared, the hooded man lunged. He didn't say a word. He simply used his weight to try and force his way into the foyer. What followed was a desperate, high-stakes struggle. The homeowner, fueled by adrenaline and survival instinct, managed to shove the intruder back. As the door swung shut, the intruder, in a fit of rage, punched the glass pane, the sound of shattering glass echoing like a gunshot. Even after the door was locked, the man didn't leave. He lingered on the porch for another full minute, his fingers fumbling with the doorknob, his breath fogging the air. He appeared to be under the influence, his movements erratic and aggressive. By the time the police arrived, he was gone, leaving behind only a broken window and a traumatized family. This incident is a textbook example of why checking the feed is the most important step in home security. Your front door is the primary barrier between your family and the outside world. The moment you open it, you are vulnerable. The doorbell camera is your scout. It gives you the information you need to decide whether to offer help or call for help.
Chapter 4. The Masked Lurker of the Night. There is something uniquely unsettling about a mask. It strips away a person's humanity and replaces it with a static, unblinking stare. In a quiet California suburb, a woman was alerted to movement at her front door around 10:20 p.m. When she pulled up the live feed on her phone, her heart stopped. Standing just inches from the lens was a man wearing a stark white mask and a dark hoodie. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't trying the door. He was simply looking. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, leaning in close to the camera, trying to peer through the windows into the darkened house. He seemed to be studying the layout, looking for signs of life or perhaps a way in. The footage was shared in a local Facebook group, and the response was chilling. Several other neighbors reported the exact same man appearing on their porches that same night. The masked lurker represents a psychological form of predatory behavior. This wasn't a crime of passion or a desperate act. It was calculated. He was scouting. He was testing the perimeter. Fortunately, because of the doorbell cameras and the quick communication between neighbors, no one opened their doors, and the lurker eventually retreated. But the image of that white mask staring directly into the camera serves as a haunting reminder that someone could be watching you, even when you think you're alone. Chapter 5. The Midnight Ritual of the Crawling Man. Just when you think you've seen the full spectrum of human strangeness, a new piece of footage emerges that defies explanation. In a viral clip that circulated through neighborhood watch apps, a homeowner was alerted to a person detected notification at 2:15 a.m. Expecting perhaps a stray cat or a late-night jogger, they opened the app to find something far more primal and disturbing. A man was not walking up the stairs to the porch. He was crawling. On all fours, with a jerky, insect-like gait, he ascended the steps. When he reached the top, he didn't ring the bell. He didn't look for a package. Instead, he began to scratch at the bottom of the wooden door. The sound, captured clearly by the camera's microphone, was a dry, rhythmic rasping, the sound of fingernails on grain. He stayed there for nearly 10 minutes, his head bowed, his body occasionally twitching. There was no attempt to break in, no shouted demands.
It was as if he were performing some private, deranged ritual. When he finally finished, he backed down the stairs in the same crawling fashion and disappeared into the tree line. This type of encounter is often more terrifying than a standard burglary attempt because it lacks a clear motive. When a criminal wants your TV, you understand the logic. When a stranger crawls to your door to scratch at the wood in the dead of night, you are facing the unknown. It is the stuff of urban legends, captured in high-definition 1080p.
The spirit of Halloween is built on the idea of scary fun. But for one family in Alexandria, Virginia, the holiday took a turn into genuine terror. Most of us are used to seeing masked figures on our porches in late October, but there is a distinct difference between a child asking for candy and a group of adults using the holiday as a tactical advantage. At 11:30 p.m., long after the last trick-or-treaters had gone home, 3 figures appeared on a doorbell camera. They were wearing elaborate, high-quality Halloween masks, distorted faces with elongated features and hollow eyes. They didn't carry candy bags. Instead, they stood in a semicircle, staring directly into the lens. One of them leaned forward and whispered into the speaker, "We know you're in there." The trio then began a coordinated effort to intimidate the residents. They took turns tapping on the windows and whispering threats through the door. For the daughter of the homeowner, who was inside at the time, the experience was a living nightmare. The masks, which would have been festive hours earlier, now served as a terrifying barrier to any human connection or empathy. This incident highlights a growing trend where criminals use social engineering or seasonal themes to bypass our natural defenses. We are less likely to call the police on a masked figure on Halloween, and these individuals knew exactly how to exploit that hesitation. The footage eventually led to a community-wide alert, but the psychological impact of having your home marked by such a group is a trauma that lingers long after the masks are taken off. Chapter 7. The Armed Ambush in Kent. While many doorbell camera stories involve lurking or deception, some are characterized by sudden, overwhelming violence. In Kent, Washington, a pair of homeowners were returning from a late-night grocery run. They felt safe. They were in their own driveway, just feet from their front door. They didn't notice the car that had quietly pulled up behind them. As they reached the porch, 2 armed suspects jumped out of the vehicle and sprinted toward them. The doorbell camera caught the entire sequence in brutal detail. One suspect leveled a handgun at the homeowners, while the other began to shout demands. The transition from a mundane evening to a life-or-death situation happened in less than 4 seconds. The son of the homeowners, Jimmy Hwine, later shared the footage to warn others. "You think you're safe once you get to your porch," he said in an interview, "but that's often when you're most distracted." The camera in this case did more than just record the crime. It provided the police with high-quality images of the suspect's clothing, their weapon, and the getaway vehicle. It also served as a stark reminder of the transition zone, the space between your car and your door where you are most vulnerable. This case has become a training tool for self-defense experts, illustrating the importance of situational awareness, even when you are literally on your own doorstep.
Chapter 8. The Ghost in the Machine. The Hacked Camera. Perhaps the most modern horror associated with doorbell cameras isn't someone standing on your porch, but someone living inside the device itself. As these cameras are connected to the internet, they are susceptible to hacking if not properly secured. A family in the Midwest began to notice strange behavior from their smart home system. It started with the doorbell ringing at odd hours with no one there. Then the two-way audio feature began to trigger on its own. One night, while the mother was home alone with her children, a voice crackled through the doorbell speaker. It wasn't a neighbor or a delivery driver. It was a distorted, mocking voice that began to comment on what the family was doing inside the house. "I like your blue rug," the voice whispered. "The kids look tired tonight." The intruder wasn't on the porch. They were miles away, having gained access to the camera's feed. They were using the very device meant to protect the family, to stalk them from the inside. This digital home invasion
is a new frontier of terror. It turns a tool of security into a weapon of harassment. The family eventually had to tear out their entire smart home system, but the feeling of being watched, of having a ghost in their walls, persisted. This story serves as a vital warning about the importance of two-factor authentication and cybersecurity in the age of the Internet of Things. Chapter 9. The Anatomy of a Home Invasion, the 9:40 p.m. red flag. Let's return to the case of Raymond Hawkins, as it provides the most comprehensive look at how a professional home invasion is executed. On May 1st, 2020, the world was quiet due to the pandemic. When Christopher Sargent approached the door at 9:40 p.m., he wasn't just winging it, he was part of a calculated four-man team. The doorbell camera footage reveals the cold efficiency of the attack. Sargent used a fake package as a prop to get the door open, a technique known as the Trojan horse. By claiming he needed to take a photo for contactless delivery proof, he forced Raymond to look down, away from the threat. The audio from this encounter is particularly harrowing. You can hear the exact moment the mask of the delivery driver drops. The polite, professional tone vanishes, replaced by a series of sharp, barked commands. Get on the ground. Don't move. The three other men, who had been crouched behind the porch railing, moved with military precision. They were inside the house within 3 seconds of the door opening. This case is often cited by security experts because of the 9:40 p.m. red flag. Legitimate delivery services like UPS, FedEx, or DHL almost never deliver that late unless it's a peak holiday season. And even then, they don't ask for photo proof in a way that requires the homeowner to open the door. The fact that two of the attackers, Anthony Lascelles and Christopher Sargent, were caught is a testament to the power of the doorbell camera as a forensic tool. Without that footage, the police would have had nothing but a traumatized family's description. With it, they had faces, a timeline, and a clear record of the violence used, which allowed for aggravated charges that carried much heavier sentences.
Chapter 10. The Stalker's Obsession. Our journey through these chilling encounters wouldn't be complete without discussing the threat that isn't a stranger, but someone known. This is the story of Kayla and the man she knew as Thomas. Kayla lived in a small, tight-knit town in California. She had a friend named Thomas, but over time, his behavior began to change. He became possessive, then obsessive. When Kayla tried to distance herself, the situation spiraled out of control. Thomas began a campaign of harassment that would make anyone's blood run cold. The evidence captured by Kayla was extensive. There were hundreds of text messages. Some were professions of love, filled with delusional promises of a future together. Others were dark and threatening, filled with vitriol and rage. But the most haunting pieces of evidence were the voicemails. In one recording, Thomas can be heard singing the song Crossroads, his voice cracking with emotion, before he suddenly begins to scream at the top of his lungs that he is goddamn crazy for her. The Ring doorbell footage from 2 a.m. shows the physical manifestation of this obsession. Thomas, whose real name was later discovered to be Matthew, is seen standing on Kayla's porch. He isn't trying to hide. He is holding a bottle in one hand and his phone in the other. He stands there for a long time, staring at the door, recording messages to her while he is literally standing feet away from where she sleeps. The name he used, Thomas Castle, was a chilling detail in itself, a reference to Frank Castle, the Marvel character known as the Punisher. It was a subtle hint at the violence he felt he was capable of. Kayla eventually managed to get a restraining order, and Matthew disappeared into the wind. His current whereabouts are unknown, leaving Kayla to live with the constant nagging fear that one day the motion alert on her phone will trigger, and he will be back. This case highlights the role of doorbell cameras in documenting domestic and interpersonal threats. It wasn't just about seeing him at the door. It was about building a case, proving the pattern of behavior, and providing the evidence needed for legal protection. Chapter 11. The Psychological Toll of the Always-On Eye. As we conclude our journey through these chilling encounters, it's worth reflecting on how this technology has changed us. For the first time in history, we have a black box for our homes. We can go back and rewatch the moments when our safety was threatened. But there is a psychological cost to this. Many people report increased anxiety after installing a doorbell camera. They find themselves checking the app dozens of times a day. Every motion detected notification sends a spike of cortisol through their system.
They are seeing the shadow wall that has always existed, but was previously invisible. However, the consensus among those who have actually faced a threat is clear. They would rather know. They would rather have the footage. They would rather have the chance to see the friendly intruder or the masked walker before they turn the handle. Knowledge, even when it's terrifying, is power. Conclude the new frontier of home security. As we look back at these encounters, a clear pattern emerges. The world outside our front doors is unpredictable. It is a mix of the mundane, the mentally ill, and the malicious. For a long time, we were blind to what happened on our porches after we turned out the lights. We only saw the aftermath, the stolen package, the broken window, the scratchy paint. Now we see it all. We see the faces of the people who need us home. We hear their voices. We witness their desperation and their rage. The smart doorbells has changed the power dynamic of home security. It has given homeowners the high ground, allowing them to absorb and react without putting themselves in immediate danger. But technology is only as good as the person using it. These stories serve as a powerful set of lessons. 1. Never open the door for a stranger at night without verifying their identity. 2. Be wary of friendly or helpful individuals who appear at odd hours. 3. Pay attention to the timing of deliveries and services. 4. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Your home is your sanctuary. In an age where the shadows are more visible than ever, stay vigilant, stay informed, and always keep an eye on the feed. Because you never know who or what might be standing on the other side of the door. Thank you for watching. If you found these stories as chilling as we did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to more deep dives into the world of true crime and home security. Have you ever caught anything strange on your doorbell camera? Let us know in the comments below. Stay safe out there.